It's the 2022 World Cup.
It's the squad update for Ecuador. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and today we'll be updating Ecuador's squad for the 2022 World Cup. We have done a media cast on the groups which took a close look at Ecuador's team, as well as a player media cast which went through each of the candidates for making the squad. There are also short versions of those, and the player edition ended with a prediction of the starters, and we're going to do the same thing here, updated on the new information. So this media cast is an addendum to that. In other words, we won't be repeating all of that, but we will be summarizing the key information and adding on to it. So it's not necessary to listen to that full-length version, but the conclusions we draw here are both based on that information and explained in more detail there. So we do recommend the full player media cast, but if we have time, we're hoping to release a player version focused solely on the final squad, so giving the bios of just those 26 players who made it. Well, the final squads have been released, and today we'll find out how accurate we were in our predictions. So we're going to list the names of the candidates and then announce who made the preliminary squad, if there is one, and then the final squad. As we guessed, most squads had a few surprises, players who didn't make it, and new or unexpected players who did. So we'll go over those players and then summarize them in a handy package at the end. We'll also discuss whether the selections and games played since June 2022 have changed our thoughts on our predicted starters and on the team's prospects. So here we go. We're going to begin with the formations. Well, we're really focused on the September games here, but oops, something dreadful happened to my graphics there. Yeah, we're focusing on the September games, but we're going to kind of do a review of their formations over the last little while. So let's take a look. Okay, well, we can see the pattern here. They always have 4 at the back, only one game where they deviated from that with 5 at the back. And generally, it's a three-line formation, so maybe a 4-4-2, but or a 4-4-3-3, 4-3-3. We've even seen a 3-4-3 there. But the point there is that there's, defense, midfield, and forward. So only sometimes is the defense divided into 2 parts. Let's take a closer look at their friendlies here. And they had 3 games. The first one was in Spain against Saudi Arabia. That was a 0-0 draw. And then in Germany against Japan, that was also a 0-0 draw. Both of those games in September. And then we have a very recent friendly on November 12th in Spain versus Iraq. And guess what? A 0-0 draw. So that kind of gives us a bit what to expect going into the Cup. A very kind of defensive team, maybe a bit of struggle scoring, which we'll look at in more detail later. In terms of formation, it was a 4-3-3. And then a 4-2-3-1 in games 4 and 5. In games in the 2 September games, and then a 4-3-3 in the November games. So twice using a 4-3-3, which at least in recent times seems to be their preferred formation, and 4-2-3-1 kind of their backup formation. So actually a lot of variety in the Copa America and in World Cup qualifying, but in the last couple of games of World Cup qualifying and in all the friendlies since, it's been one of those 2 formations, 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1. And all 3 of their recent friendlies in September and November seem to involve starters, or at least starters under consideration. However, Game 3 in November seemed to be missing their European players. The game played on November 12th was when club play was still going on in Europe. So I noticed a lot of the European-based players missing from that. So no really experimentative friendlies there. So it seems like they're kind of maybe making some final decisions as to who's going to be starters and giving those players some time together on the field rather than kind of figuring out new things. Okay, well, enough of that. Let's move on to the squad, and we'll begin with the manager. So Alfaro Gustavo, manager of Ecuador since 2020, and we think he is he has been named to the final squad, as it were, even though in a sense he would be naming himself. Let's move on to goalkeepers, and the way we do this is first we go through the names, the candidates, and then we're going to basically say which ones made the squad and remove from the list of those who didn't, and then we're going to kind of summarize the position at the end of the section. And at the end of the media cast here, we'll go through the list again and figure out who we think is going to be the starter. Okay, so for names here, we had no definite candidates actually, but we did have three likely candidates: Alexander Dominguez, Hernan Galindez, and Washington Moises Ramirez. I see him being called Moises Ramirez now, so maybe that's the name you should be familiar with. We have a possible candidate in Pedro Ortiz, and then a possible but unlikely candidate, or two of them actually, in Jorge Pinos and Gabriel Ceballos. And we will erase Pinos and Ceballos from the list because they didn't make it. Actually, our three likely candidates did. So Alexander Dominguez, Hernan Galindez, and Moises Ramirez. Pedro Ortiz did not make it, and we will remove him from the list, but that's kind of an interesting one because he was the starter in the 2021 Copa America, so not making the squad there despite starting in the recent Copa America. Okay, let's finish with a little summary here. So Ortiz started the 2021 Copa America, as mentioned. But the supposed starter, Dominguez, returned to play 7 games since the 2021 Copa America. But Hernan Galindez also played 7 games during this period, and Ramirez started just two. So Dominguez and Galindez each started a September friendly, and Dominguez started the recent one in November. So it looks like a fairly even split between Dominguez and Galindez. I suppose we'd give a slight edge to Dominguez, Alexander Dominguez, going into the Cup, but you know, they played pretty much an equal amount of games. Okay, let's move on to defenders and central defenders, and we have quite a few candidates actually. Ecuador kind of famously, in our books famously, was one of the teams like Ghana, Mexico, and USA who were examining a lot of candidates for this cup. And so there'll be a lot of hacking and hewing here to reduce that to 26 players. So the definite candidates are Piero Incape and Felix Torres. Likely candidates, we have Robert Arboleda and Xavier Arriaga. Possible candidates, Fernando Leon and Jackson Peroso. And then we have 4 possible but unlikely candidates. And rather than say these names twice, I'm just going to say them and then delete them because they didn't make the squad. So Joshua Quinones, Gustavo Valasila, Marlan Mejia, and Luis Segovia. None of them selected, those possible but unlikely players. And we had 3 players who seemed to be off the squad. So Moises Cardozo, Franklin Guerra, and Diego Almeida, none of them making the squad there. And finally, we talked in the main podcast about retired player Arturo Mina. So obviously didn't make the squad because he's retired. Now let's look at the main candidates and say which ones who made it. So Piero Hincapi did make the squad, as did Felix Torres. So our two definite candidates making the squad there. Robert Arboleda made the squad, and as did Xavier Arriaga. So our two likely candidates also making the squad. And the possible candidates, Jackson Perozo did make the squad, but Fernando Leon did not. And believe it or not, despite all of the names that we dealt with there, they managed to fit in a new candidate. So the new candidate is William Pacho. So he has been added to the squad, William Pacho. So I'll tell you a little bit about him because he wasn't part of the Full Player podcast. So he got his first appearance on the bench in September 2022, and he actually didn't start any of the remaining 3 games there until November, but he was on the bench for 2 of those. However, he was not selected for the November match. So he is 21 years old and has no caps for the team. William Pacho, nevertheless, making the squad. Okay, so we'll just summarize the position there. And Hincapi and Torres were the main players since the 2021 Copa America. Perozo and Hincapi started both September friendlies, though. Torres was not on the squad, but he did return in November, and there he paired with Xavier Arriaga for the November game. So at the end, we'll say whether that has changed our view on who we think the starters are going to be. All right, moving on to left backs, we have a definite candidate in Purvis Estupinan and a likely candidate in Diego Palacios. Again, we'll do a bit of hacking and hewing here because none of these candidates made it, so I'll kind of remove them from the list as we go. Possible but unlikely candidate, Christian Cruz and Lionel Quinones. Neither of those two made it. And 2 players who seem to be off the squad, Bader Cachedo and Mario Pineda, also not making the final squad. However, both of the ones we had as definite and likely did make the squad. So Purvis Estupinan and Diego Palacios going to the World Cup. Okay, we'll summarize the position by saying Estupinan had this position nailed down since the 2021 Copa America. He also started both friendlies, but it was Palacios in the recent November friendly. So we'll actually, the starter there is pretty obvious, but we'll come back. Let us go to right backs, and we have Byron Castillo as the likely candidate, but we are adding one. We're going to bring up a right winger. Oh my goodness, where is he? Angelo Preciado. I've lost the name. Okay, sorry, I'm going to have to write that in. Angelo Preciado here. The right winger, we moved him to right back because that's where he has played for the most part. He played right back in Copa America and usually in the following games. He has played as a right winger during this period, but more often a right back. Well, right backs often do play right wing anyway. Okay, so a bit of a surprise here. Byron Castillo, our likely candidate, not making the squad. However, Angelo Preciado did make the squad. So really, that's about the only surprise for Ecuador. The possible but unlikely I did this all wrong. I'm not supposed to announce who made it before going through the candidates. However, we'll do the same thing here, kind of remove them as we go, because none of the possible but unlikely or players below that made the squad. So Jose Hurtado, Marcos Andre Lopez, and Romario Cachiedo. None of them making the squad. They were in the possible but unlikely category. And seemingly off the squad was Pedro Perlaza, and he did not make the final cut either. So just the one right back there, Angelo Preciado. And let's summarize the position. So Castillo and right winger Angelo Preciado. Actually, some of my sources have now recoded him as a right back. Those two shared the position since the 2021 Copa America. Each one started in September. In the September friendlies, and actually Castillo played the November friendly, only to find that he wasn't selected. And there is a reason behind this story. It's actually a pretty interesting story behind Brian Castillo. There was controversy about his eligibility filed by Chile, and they ended up being deducted 3 points from their 2026 World Cup campaign over this matter. And I think they actually won the case in terms that he's been cleared to play for Ecuador. But I think there's still the point deduction because of the way the paperwork was done. So it seems like the paperwork is at the center of the challenge. And there's still disagreement whether he was born in Colombia or Ecuador, and even disagreement about his birth age. So I think the birth documents being the issue there. But the detail that kind of confused me was an Ecuadorian court decided he was eligible to play for Ecuador. Well, that seems a little self-interested, so I'd have to really research the details. It does seem like he was cleared by FIFA to play, but they nevertheless decided not to bring him along. So Byron Castillo not joining the squad, and that story will probably continue because it doesn't seem fully resolved yet. Okay, moving on to midfielders. We have defensive midfielders. So definite candidates Moises Caicedo and Carlos Gruezo. I should probably put Gruezo first there. Likely candidates Alan Franco and Jegson Mendes. We have possible candidates in Jose Cifuentes and Michael Carcelan, and possible but unlikely candidates, which I'm going to remove because none of them made it. But it's Dixon Arroyo, Jordi Alcivar, João Ortiz, and Johnny Quinones, none of them making the squad. So let's go back and deal with the others to see who made it among the more likely candidates, and it was Moises Caicedo and Carlos Gruezo. No surprise, our definite candidates made it there, but so did the likely ones, Alan Franco and Jegson Mendes. So we will highlight both of those in green on the YouTube graphic. And among the possible, one of them made it, Jose Cifuentes, but Michael Carcelan didn't make it. Cifuentes was always the more likely between those two anyway. In terms of before we summarize the position, we'll look at the central midfielders because we usually deal with those together. And actually not many candidates here, and none of them made it. So possible but unlikely candidates, Jose Carabali and Fernando Gabor, neither of those making it. And well, seemingly off the squad, but really I think retired Christian Naboa. The veteran did play up until 2021, the Copa America there, but not after that. So we just have the defensive midfielders here, and they play kind of both. So let's summarize the position. This is actually fairly settled since the 2021 Cup, with Gruezo usually starting in the middle and Caicedo usually starting on the left. kind of left central. The right side is less decided, with Cifuentes, Mendes, and Franco generally sharing the position, although they do pop up elsewhere in the central midfield also. So it gets fairly complex, and even the September friendlies and the November friendly were complex, so I'll try to simplify it. Gruezo and Cachado, the two most stable players, were not called up for the November friendly, but again, I'm presuming that's because they still had duties with their European club. So they did appear. So they weren't called up for the November friendlies. They did appear in the September friendlies, which was a mishmash of all 5 players appearing in various positions. So there we have it. Cachado and Gruezo, the main candidates, the other 3 kind of popping in and out. Okay, phew, that was kind of tricky. Let's move on to the left midfielders. Okay. Well, we don't have that in the graphic because there are no candidates. And in short, they don't have anyone designated in this or in the right midfielder position. So it's defensive midfielders who play this role. As we saw in the last section, it's usually Cachado playing on the left side if it's a 3-man midfield. Okay, moving on to right midfielders. I said we don't have any candidates, but I mean kind of viable candidates. And part of the reason for that is because we have moved Angel Mena, who is actually coded as a right midfielder. We have moved him to right winger over there, so we'll deal with him a little bit later. The ones that are left are a player who's seemingly off the squad, Renato Ibarra, and the retired Antonio Valencia, who we talked about in the main podcast, but obviously no longer on the team. So yes, left and right midfielders, no one selected, no players in those positions. The defensive midfielders handle it. So we'll kind of move upfield now to the left wingers. And here we have no definite candidates, but we have a likely candidate in Jeremy Sarmiento and 3 possible candidates in Alexander Alvarado, Romario Ibarra, and João Rojas, sometimes called João Rojas Lopez. We also have a possible but unlikely candidate in Janner Cardozo, and also a player seemingly off the squad, Washington Cardozo, and we will remove those 2 Carrozos from the list, neither of them making it. Let's go back to the top and see our likely candidates are Jeremy Sarmiento did make the squad. And among the possible candidates, just one of the 3 made the squad. So Romario Ibarra making the squad, but Alexander Alvarado and João Rojas not making the squad there for the left wingers. So in summary of the position, we do consider the upper left quadrant here. So it might be a left winger, left attacking midfielder, or a left forward. However, when it's a left winger, which is rarely used, it's usually attacking midfielder Ayrton Preciado. Otherwise, this position was filled by various players, but Sarmiento increasingly was used up until June 2022. However, in the September friendlies, it was Romario Ibarra playing both games, and even starting the November friendly, but Sarmiento did sub in for Ibarra. Oh, sorry, no. Sarmiento wasn't there for the November friendly because he plays in Europe. So anyway, it was Ibarra in all 3 games, but Sarmiento did sub in at halftime in one of the September friendlies there. Okay. So yeah, a little bit difficult to say who is the starter there, but we'll come back and consider that at the end. Meanwhile, we move over to right wingers. So we did move Angel Mena over to this position, and he is a likely candidate. And then the only other player here is Freddie Mina, and that's partly because we moved Angelo Preciado, who was initially coded as a right winger. We moved him to right defense, if you recall. So just Angel Mina and Freddie Mina, Angel Mena, I should say, and Freddie Mina, M-E-N-A versus M-I-N-A. Anyway, we will say goodbye to Freddie Mina. He did not make the squad, and Angel Mena did make the squad. So let's look at the position. The position, when used, is primarily Angel Mena since the 2021 Copa America. It wasn't used in recent friendlies, the position, but Mena started as a right attacking midfielder in one September friendly and as a right forward in the recent November friendly. So yes, not plying his trade as a winger, but as an attacking midfielder or even a right forward. Okay, let us move on to the forwards. We include attacking midfielders in that discussion. We don't have actually many, well, we have many candidates. We don't have many likely candidates here. So let's go through the list. And actually, I will erase as we go here because none of these candidates, except the last one we'll talk about, made the squad. So possible but unlikely candidates: Jojan Julio did not make the squad, and Danny Cabezas did not make the squad. We also had three players. I said we'd be doing a lot of hacking and hewing here. We also have actually four players who seem to be off the squad, and none of them made it. Juan Cáceres, Fidel Martinez, Junior Sornosa, and Damian Diaz, none of them making the squad. But we had an injured player, Ayrton Preciado. So we just had him as injured here, and otherwise we would have had him as possible. And really the reason is because we didn't know what the situation was with him. So probably more than possible, but so much rested on his injury, which was a fairly serious one, a fractured tibia injury. But he has returned to duty, and they will be happy to have him back. So Ayrton Preciado did make the squad. Let's talk about the position, because as you see, we don't have a lot of players here. Perhaps that's why they often go with a 4-3-3 formation, actually. Ironically, Ayrton Preciado has never filled the role when they have had a central attacking midfielder. We'll kind of have to see where he's going to be. I'm just looking in the 2021 Copa America, he lined up as a left winger in game 2 and 3, but as a co-forward in game 4 there. And in Copa America 2019, he lined up as a left attacking midfielder. So yeah, maybe we'll see him on the left or right side of the forward line. Okay, yeah, but again, a bit of an unknown because he was injured for quite a long time. And that, by the way, was a fractured tibia injury. Let me just see if I can find some details on what happened there. So he fractured his tibia from last February 2022, and that continued until the beginning of September. So that kept him out of the March and June games in 2022. And they were hoping he would recover in time, and obviously relieved that he did. So Ayrton Preciado there, and we'll move on to secondary strikers. We actually only had one possible but unlikely candidate here, Walter Chala, and he didn't make the squad. So we can actually delete the whole category there and move on to the forwards. We have three definite candidates, Michael Estrada, Gonzalo Plata, and Enna Valencia. And we have four possible candidates: Jordi Caicedo, Leonardo Campana, Jorkaev Riasco, and Nilson Angulo. I'm going to leave them there because there is a candidate who made it amongst them. And possible but unlikely, we have Jose Angulo and Brian Angulo, and we can remove those two from the list because they didn't make it. We also have a new candidate, and we will talk about him shortly. Just give me a moment here. Yes, new candidate, Kevin Rodriguez. Will come back and actually introduce him. Okay, let's go back and look at the definite candidates. So Michael Estrada making the final squad, Gonzalo Plata and Enna Valencia, all three of them making the squad. Among the possible, Jordi Cachedo did not make it. Leonardo Campagna not selected. However, Jorkaev Riasco did make the squad, and Nilson Angulo not making the squad. So that's three Angulos, the poor Angulo clan, not having a good time in Ecuador for this World Cup selection. New candidate, Kevin Rodriguez. So he is selected. He got his first cap in November. So right just before the cup there. And he subbed into that to that game. And he is 22 years old and plays for Imbabura in Ecuador. He's been with that club his whole life, so he must be in very good form, the 22-year-old, to be suddenly brought to the squad this way. So let's summarize the forward position. We can divide it into three parts, the left, right, and center, because they often do have three up at the top. So the left side is quite undecided. Sometimes Enna Valencia is in that position, and various other players like attacking midfielder Ayrton Preciado, or recently Romario Ibarra bouncing in and out of the position. So actually Ibarra played left forward both times in the recent September friendlies. And sorry, I just want to check and see who played it in November. It was Ibarra again. So actually kind of making a stronger bid for that position as left attacking midfielder. On the right side, it was more stable with basically Angel Mena and Plata, Gonzalo Plata, sharing the position. So they each played left forward both times in the September friendlies. And Mena got the nod in November, but too much shouldn't be made of that because Plata was playing in Europe, so wasn't on the squad. He plays for Real Valladolid in Spain. For the centre forward, Michael Estrada or Enna Valencia are usually in the middle as centre forwards. Towards the end of the June the June friendlies, Jordi Cachedo and Campagna were both tried out. They both got starts in the June friendlies. I guess they didn't impress because neither of them made it. So it seems like September we're kind of down to the Nugget squad, and Estrada and Valencia shared the September friendlies, and then Estrada played in November. But again, too much shouldn't be made of that because Valencia was not on the team playing for his club in Turkey. So there we go. It'll be interesting to come back to this and try to predict who we think are going to be starters. Meanwhile, though, we're going to move on to some statistics for the squad. And so we're looking at just the 26 players here. In the full-length podcast, we did it for kind of all of the candidates they had before them. Now we've erased, I think, almost 35 to 40 of those candidates, so we're just down to the final squad, and the average age of that final squad is 25.6. So this is turning out to be quite young. The average we have is 26.7. So we're finding the players in this World Cup a little bit older. So Ecuador with a young squad, and I'll detail it a little bit with a list I made, and we can look at who's who, but we'll do that right away here. But we do have 4 players who are 33 or older. We'll call them kind of senior players. But balancing that out, we have 8 players who are 22 or younger. So we'll take a look at a list here. And we have Hernan Galindez and Alexander Dominguez, the 2 goalkeepers, the oldest players on the squad, both 35. And the other older players are Angel Mena at 34 and Ena Valencia at 33. And then actually between 33 and 28, we only have one player, Robert Arboleda. I thought he didn't make the squad, but anyway, only one player. He's 31. So below him, everyone is 28 or younger. At the bottom of the thing, we have 8 players who are 22 or younger, and we're looking at kind of who are these big players, or are they just kind of bench players working their way in? Turns out several of them are big players. Gonzalo Plata is, a fairly regular starter. The both players who were brought in new are in this category too, so there are some younger ones. But the bottom 3 on the list, Moises Caicedo at 21, Piero Hincapié at 20, and Jeremy Sarmiento at 20, are all kind of important members of the squad. So that looks good actually for the future in terms of after the World Cup and rebuilding the squad. I'm sure some players will disappear there. Okay, the average number of caps is 24.2. So we compare this with other teams and they are quite low there. So that suggests they're fairly inexperienced. I guess with all those young players, it shouldn't be a surprise. The average is 32.9. Among the teams I've done so far. So fairly inexperienced, and I have a little graphic for that, but we won't spend too long on it. Ena Valencia is at the top, the most experienced player with 74 caps, and Alexander Dominguez, the goalkeeper, with 68. After that, we take a precipitous drop to Angel Mena at 46. And then there's kind of the middle group. And then we have 6 players with 10 caps or less. Jeremy Sarmiento, who plays for Brighton, with 9 caps, probably the biggest name among those. All right, we move to total goals. That is 74. So these players have 74 goals among them. Of course, it's kind of an inexperienced squad, so that's going to make it a bit lower. But the average is 107 among the 12 teams that I've done so far. So they are quite low on the goal scoring front. And a little statistic we run just to compare doesn't mean much in itself, the total goals per cap. But Ecuador is 11.8. The average of the teams I've done so far is 12.6. So again, pretty low on the scoring, and actually the little chart I'm going to show will make that pretty clear. So Ena Valencia, of course, their big scorer, and he has a rate of 47%. That is that doesn't make sense. 33 and 74. Okay, well, we'll ignore these 2 columns and just look at the percentages here. Ena Valencia 47.3, and Michael Estrada at 22.9. Actually, even for a forward, 22.9% scoring ratio is not great. That's about 1 in 5 games, And then everyone below that is 16% or below. So Angel Mena and Gonzalo Plata around 15% there. And so this is not looking good. And then the other players don't really score that much. They're all the best ones. 4 of them are around 10 or 11, 10 to 12%. And in fact, 2 of them are central defenders. So a little struggle getting goals and maybe over reliant on Ena Valencia there. Okay, well, we move on to some summaries. So we will begin with notable non-selections. And even though we had him just as a possible candidate, I'm going to put Pedro Ortiz on the list because he was the starter in the 2021 Copa America. I mean, that was a bit of a surprise, but yeah, kind of a steep uh, roof is what I want to say. Kind of went up quickly and down quickly. Pedro Ortiz, uh, and also Byron Castillo. The story we told in the podcast about questions over his eligibility. So we did have him as a likely candidate, and my sense of the story was that they just didn't want to risk bringing him especially until it's really kind of firmly decided as to what his status is. And as I said, they've already lost 3 points in the next qualification over this situation. So that's kind of interesting. New candidates. No, sorry, the next category is surprise inclusions. And we don't have any. None of the players that we got were from the possible but unlikely or seems to be off the squad. So we feel good about the accuracy of our predictions there. No surprises for Ecuador. New players, we have two of them. Central defender William Pacho and forward Kevin Rodriguez. So they managed to find their way onto the squad at the very end there. For updates on injury, we begin with those who have recovered from injury. So Ayrton Preciado, we talked about him as we went through the players, so they will be happy to have him back. We have three other categories, injury doubt but still on the roster. Ecuador is looking good here with not no injuries to be concerned about. Players dropped due to injury, there are none. So again, Ecuador lucky as far as that goes. And injured but was not a strong candidate anyway. We have one player, João Rojas Lopez. So we did have him as a possible candidate. So perhaps his injury contributed to his not being selected, but we don't really think so because he hadn't been starting. He started two of their games since the 2021 Copa America and was subbed in for three. So yeah, maybe it was the reason. But again, we had him as a possible candidate, and his injury was from July 2022, and it was ongoing until now with an unknown return date. So whether it was through injury or just selection, he didn't make the squad. Okay, we're going to finish with the predicted starters. Okay, let's start with the manager, Alfaro Gustavo. So we'll kind of say he is a starter in a sense. And let's move on to the goalies. So we have three candidates as goalies, and they are Alexander Dominguez and Hernan Galindez and Wellington Moises Ramirez. So at the end of the previous podcast, we really couldn't form a decision. We felt that Dominguez and Galindez had an equal chance. I'm not really convinced they're going to be rotating. It's more a matter that we can't decide between the two. Each of them started one of the September friendlies, and then Domingo started in November. So we think that gives him an edge, but not enough to say that he's going to be the starter and Galindez is not. So we edge toward Dominguez, but we'll have leave it the way it was. Okay, for central defenders, we have Piero Hincapié, Felix Torres, Robert Arboleda, Xavier Arriaga, Jackson Perozo, and William Pacho. Those are our candidates. So we had nominated Hincapié and Torres as almost definitely the starters. We were pretty confident about that, and we marked them in green. We still think actually it's going to be those two, Hincapié and Torres, though our confidence was a bit shaken by Perozo and Jackson each getting starts in the recent friendly. But perhaps they were just giving them experience, so that's the way we're going to view it. And we're going to stick with Hincapié and Torres as the starters. At the left back, it's fairly clear. Estupiñán Purvis, the other candidate, is Diego Palacios, but we think he'll be the backup. On the right back, well, we ended the previous podcast, the full-length podcast, by thinking that Castillo and Preciado would share the position, or else, we had them in yellow, which may indicate also that we weren't really sure if there was going to be a starter. We would have it the same way here, except Byron Castillo has not been brought along because of that controversy. So that seems to give the position to Angelo Preciado by default. So right back, Angelo Preciado, pretty likely there. Defensive midfielders, and really these are kind of include right and left midfielders. We have Moises Caicedo and Carlos Gruezo, Alan Franco, Jegson Mendez, and Jose Cifuentes. So we had Gruezo and Caicedo as the starters, and we're going to stick with that. So we'll just highlight those two as starters. And then rather than hammer out who played where in the recent friendlies, we'll just kind of nominate all three. So Cifuentes, Mendez, and Franco as possible starters. But we do give a nod to Cifuentes, who started all three September games, one of them actually as an attacking midfielder, September and November games. And then we give a nod, so we give an anti-nod. What's the opposite of a nod? We give a still head. We give a still head to Franco, who among the three kind of plays the least, even though he was a likely candidate. We kind of view him at the bottom of the three. He just started one of those three friendlies. Nevertheless, our conclusion is to mark them all in yellow, thinking that they'll kind of be rotating the positions. Over to right midfielders. Left wingers. Then we have Jeremy Sarmiento and Romario Ibarra. This is a bit of an interesting one. We actually hadn't nominated a starter for this position in the main podcast, but on reflection, we should have. We should have put Sarmiento as a possible starter because he was moving into the position. However, the recent friendlies changed that with Ibarra starting all three. So as we noted, Sarmiento was playing for his European club for the November game. So we're not convinced Ibarra has taken the position from Sarmiento, but it kind of leaves it up in the air as to which of those will start. And then mitigating this is the fact that Ayrton Preciado may be a candidate as a starter also, now that he has returned from his injury. So we have a bit of confusion over there. So we're going to put Sarmiento and Ibarra as possibles, and we're going to add attacking midfielder Preciado to that grouping. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the cup. The right winger position is we have Angel Mena, who's coded as a right midfielder, but we do think Mena will be no, I don't think he's going to be a starter, because I think it's a fairly even bid between him and Gonzalo Plata. So I'm changing this on the fly because I was have it in my notes to mark Angel Mena, but as I'm talking, I'm a bit doubtful. So Mena and Plata, they're maybe rotating. And finally, the forward position, Michael Estrada and Enna Valencia rotating. And a bit of confusion was caused by players being tried out towards the end there in June. So we didn't see as much who would be in the position. But in September, it returned to business as usual. But that was Estrada and Valencia each starting one. And we can only say that Estrella started the November game because Valencia wasn't available. So we're not sure. However, my sense of it is Estrella is a portable, but Enna Valencia, I think he'll be on the field. If it's not as a centre forward, then as a left forward, or I think he is more likely to be on the field, an important player for them. So I'm hedging my bets quite a bit here. But there we go. That is the starting lineup. I don't know if it all adds up to 11, but there we have it. Okay, well, we'll just finish with some closing thought. Does the selection change our opinion about their chances? Well, the answer would be no. It doesn't change our opinion because what came out was very much what we predicted and expected. So really, if we go back to the discussion in the team podcast, which we won't repeat here, nothing has really changed. So I'm going to end the podcast with that. If you want to kind of know what our thinking is, you can go back to the mostly the team podcast, so the group on Group A, and a little bit in the full-length podcast. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this mediacast. Keep in mind, we may be editing together a list of the bios of the 26 final candidates. That actually will just be an edited version of the full-length podcast rather than a new podcast or a new mediacast. And if we do it, it'll come out in the first few days of the Cup. As a bit of a time crunch here. Okay, but meanwhile, keep an eye on us at Soccerphiles Canada. That's Soccerphiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. And we have lots of other podcasts, so you can check them out at our website. Whoops, I forgot to show the closing picture again on my screen. I always do that. Yes, or you can just put Soccerphiles Canada into Google or YouTube and we will come up. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you for our next team.